Okay, happy birthday, Henry, nu știu, I don't know, he's Belgian, he was Belgian. Henri van de Velde, although he's on Wikipedia, his name is, pronounced in a Dutch way, as you can see. Henri Clemens van de Velde, born on the 3rd of April, 1863. So he was 14 years older than Le Corbusier and died in 1957. Was a Belgian painter, architect, interior designer, and art theorist. Together with Victor Horta and Paul Hankar, he is considered one of the founders of Art Nouveau in Belgium. He worked in Paris with Samuel Bing, the founder of the first gallery of Art Nouveau in Paris. Van de Velde spent the most important part of his career in Germany and became a major figure in the German Jugendstil, which is the German translation of Art Nouveau. He had a decisive influence on German architecture and design at the beginning of the 20th century. So, born almost a little bit later than mid-19th century and died a little bit later than mid-20th century. This was the man. And he studied initially painting. Then I think with his wife, he became interested in interior design, but he was constantly painting. He was essentially a painter, but he built a lot. And he even built the first building where the Bauhaus school was. Before Walter Gropius built his well-known building, but I think the building by this gentleman, rather elegant, Henry van de Velde, is in no way inferior to the building by Walter Gropius. I hope I have images of that building. Henry van de Velde. Happy birthday to you, sir. Kind of alone in his studio. Maybe his collaborators or employees went to have a Mac somewhere or a coffee. Drawings by Henry van de Velde. I love this quotation from Henry van de Velde. A line is a force. Although is in almost contradiction with what Louis Kahn said, that the first line on a piece of paper is less. Well, because he was referring to the infinite number of possibilities that a blank piece of paper has. So when you trace a line on a white piece of paper, yes, you bring in a force, if we are to quote Henry van de Velde, but on the other hand, you reduce the number of those infinite possibilities. Anyway, he was an artist. Well, sorry for the resolution here. He built furniture, he built buildings, he drew, he painted, and so on. Now we start with a proposal for a Nietzsche memorial. Here it is. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yes, of course, many artists, not just artists, were very moved by Friedrich Nietzsche because the exuberance of this philosopher is indeed intoxicating. And I think in my naivete that perhaps at least in the art schools, Friedrich Nietzsche should be read very carefully and maybe even, have the students read him, in a mandatory way, because he is nourishing. He's a very nourishing philosopher. Philosophers in general are not so nourishing because they are very analytical and logical and rather dry and systematic. But this was not the case of Friedrich Nietzsche. He also built, I think, Van de Velde, the interior of the archive, the Nietzsche archive. Will arrive there. That is, if I don't confound him with someone else, which is also possible. I am lost in the labyrinth of too much information, and I cannot truly call it knowledge. And I'm not good actually at archive or processing information. Anyway, here he is drawing. As he was very inspired by Vincent van Gogh, and indeed, who wouldn't be? You know, that incredible, almost Christ-like figure in painting, Vincent van Gogh. By the way, Vincent van Gogh, I don't know. I mean, you know, he cut his ear at one moment, and there is even a website with that name, the cut ear or something like this. But what I want to say is that I reflected on that, and I know that what happened was on that night when he cut his ear, Vincent van Gogh ran after Paul Gauguin, his good friend, the brilliant French painter. And just a few meters before he reached him, he turned against himself and he cut his own ear. And then he went with that ear to his girlfriend, well, a prostitute, and offered her his ear as a present or something. But I asked myself, why did he cut his ear? And while I'm a terrible, absolutely terrible reader of the Bible, I remember I read something either in the Bible or about the Bible that the soldier who imprisoned Christ also cut his own ear. And because, I don't know if you know, Vincent van Gogh, before he attempted to start to paint, because he began kind of late, he was a preacher in a mine. He was preaching about God. He was a preacher, a religious worker, so to speak. And I'm sure he knew the Bible very well. So I'm asking myself, what if Van Gogh punished himself for the thought he had of attacking his friend Paul Gauguin, because he had the highest respect and even affection towards Paul Gauguin. I imagine that Vincent van Gogh, in his mental hierarchies, placed Gauguin very, very highly. So I'm thinking, because he was an exalted human being, and who knows, maybe he even drank that evening, and he had the tumultuousness of a great soul, tormented, very tormented. So he ran after Gauguin, and just meters away from him, turned against himself and cut his own ear. So this is just maybe a crazy interpretation. I try to find some kind of a explanation for this incredible, sad, very sad happening. Anyway, back to Henry van der Velde, who was influenced by Vincent van Gogh, and you are going to see some paintings that show it clearly. He was also influenced by the Pointillists, Paul Signac, and Seurat. Very interesting and complex man, Henry van der Velde. You see, he did interior design, he did paintings, he built buildings. I mean, we look at this rendering and we say, wow, it's almost a cosmic kind of an interior with that thing above, that skylight. Architecture. I don't know what this means, and I don't even attempt to read it. 1895, 1896. First private residence in Belgium. Here it is. Yeah, it is 130 years or so old, but it still has some vigor, some force. Talking about line is a force. You could also say about a good building is a force. And I think it's a good building. Yes, it doesn't have a flat terrace. It doesn't have a terrace jardin, but it's still a vigorous, interesting building, and with some unconventionalities here, I would say, besides, you know, the more common forms that he employed. He remained until the very end, you know, an architect with a little bit difficult to pin down, exactly because he, you know, interpreted various programs and various styles in his own personal way, and a very seminal and interesting man, really, Henry van der Velde. I myself would need to spend some more time studying him, just as he studies there in his solitude, something there, maybe a drawing or a writing. This is him in a kitchen, I guess. But you see, it's a kitchen also with a bed or something, you know, appearing to be a bed. And I remember when I was a kid, you know, and I used to visit my grandmother, you know, she also had a bed in the kitchen. And actually, it's very, very pleasant to have a bed in the kitchen, you know, especially if you can lay down there while your grandmother cooks something, or your mother, or, you know, we don't think in these terms any longer. Who think of placing a bed in the kitchen? I didn't see too many so-called contemporary or modern plans like this, but I really think it's very enjoyable to be close to the hearth, you know, and if good soup is cooking, boiling there, or something is, it's even more pleasant. I truly think so. And it seems Henry van der Velde, a sophisticated Belgian, as this photograph shows, probably thought in a similar way. Interior decoration of Siegfried Bing's art gallery, Maison de l'Art Nouveau in Paris, 1895. So the Franco-German art dealer and publisher Siegfried Bing played a key role in publicizing the style, meaning Art Nouveau. His gallery was called House of New Art, Maison de l'Art Nouveau. Bing opened a new gallery at 22nd Rue de Provence in Paris, devoted to new works in both the fine and decorative arts. The interior and furniture of the gallery were designed by the Belgian architect Henry van der Velde, one of the pioneers of Art Nouveau architecture. I wish I had some more pictures with this, but I don't, and I apologize. Now, an interior of the Folkwang Museum in Hagen in Germany, but no pictures. Villa SS in Chemnitz in Germany, 1902, 1903. This one also a rather complex building, you know, and a little bit awkward, with even a touch of clumsiness. But as Saul Steinberg, Steinbeck or Steinberg, I always have a problem with Steinbeck, because there is, Steinbeck was an important North American writer, and Steinberg was actually a Romanian-born architect who studied architecture in Milan, but then became in New York, in the United States, a famous graphic artist. He was doing kind of cartoons. If you don't know his works, I truly suggest you check him out, Saul Steinberg. He used to do for many years the covers of New York Magazine, and he was very famous, and with good reasons. He was excellent. And he used to say that the genius has something clumsy about him. And I think something close to clumsiness can be seen, although maybe the word is debatable, in the works of Henry van der Velde. You know, as if something is a little bit awkward, a little bit off, a little bit, you know, not quite right. There is, like, you know, you look here, you know, why did he do this here? but not here. You know, it's a symmetrical situation, isn't it? So it's, I mean, I don't know why he didn't do it here, because there are small differences between this side and the other, which are a little bit capricious and you don't quite understand. And even this, you know, rather rhetorical balcony here, and also the color amplifies the rhetorics because it's painted in blue and the walls are in kind of yellowish. But particularly here, it's something a little bit off. But who knows? Maybe it could be seen differently, or maybe in this way but this is not the entrance into the building. So I am a little bit confused. Anyway, he was an excellent architect, and you see even the interior is has a certain drama. Is you know, it's not an interior that leaves you indifferent. And it's not quite art modern. Sorry, Art Nouveau. Maybe here the skylight has some elements that might, but otherwise, no, it's not Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau was Victor Horta or Hector Guimard in France, but here is a little bit something else. Okay, maybe here, yes, there is, but a reticent kind of Art Nouveau is only partially Art Nouveau. Yes, he designed the interior, decorated the interior of the Nietzsche archive in Weimar, in Germany in 1903. Let's look at it. See, he did just the interior design. I never understand why we separate, you know, interior architecture from exterior architecture, meaning architecture, as it is called, and urbanism. They should be together. They should all study all things, you know. I truly would give a project for urbanist to an interior designer or interior architect and so on. I would permutate between them because it's the same job. It's architecture. And actually, in urbanism and in interior architecture, the professors are architects. They are not urbanists or interior architects. They are architects. We separate them. Here is the portrait of Friedrich Nietzsche. I admire Nietzsche very much. Yeah, this is the archive in Weimar. And in Weimar, he also built, as I said, the first building the Bauhaus had, because before moving to Dessau, I think in 1925, in 1919, the Bauhaus was founded in Weimar. Now, certain things maybe were modified in time in this interior design, you know, carpet and other things. But look at these details, you know, we don't think of such matters any longer because who has the time, you know, to design handles for doors unless you have a very special project. Stephen Hall used to do it, but very few architects occupy themselves with something like this. Now, the Bauhaus University, it wasn't a university, it shouldn't be called a university, but maybe it is such a thing now in the present. I don't know how it is called, but that's the building where the Bauhaus began. And it was designed by Henry van der Velde, not by Gropius. Gropius designed, you know, the more modernistic buildings in Dessau 6 years later. I like this building by Henry van der Velde, and really, if I compare it with buildings by Gropius, I wouldn't say that they are inferior. Now, yes, they are not maybe so radical, but not always what is radical is better. Maybe it's my conformist side that talks now. I don't know, but I like this building by Henry van der Velde. A side elevation. the ateliers, the studio with plenty of glass, but the glass is divided into small segments, as you see, and as such, it's more so-called traditional looking, or, you know, he was able, I mean, of course, this kind of, you know, handrail Gropius would not have, but are they, you know, something inferior? No, they are not, I think. Anyway, Henry van der Velde, Weimar, the Bauhaus. A clubhouse of the Chemnitzer Lawn Tennis Club. It was demolished. I don't know if I have picture. I do. This one very interesting as well, you know, and yes, there are the ornamental indulgences of Art Nouveau, but again, are they diminishing the quality of architecture? I don't think so. Also, what is happening here is rather, you know, enticing and interesting. I like Art Nouveau in general. Mansion of Karl Ernst Osthaus in Hagen in Germany, 1907, 1908. Again, this building is not following the path of the Terrace Jardin. It's not, you know, it's very different from Villa Savoy, isn't it? Yes, built earlier. It's heavy, it has masonry, it has bricks, stone, it has sloping roof, it has bow windows, but is it something inferior? I don't think so. You know, it's less revolutionary, but maybe more convincing, actually. And I think the fact that he was a painter, he was an artist, and we are going to see also some of his paintings, you know, help him, because again, you know, whatever the Homo economicus might say, the relationship between architecture and art always existed. Always existed. That's the truth. And if we neglect this truth, we are diminishing ourselves. Because it, you know, it's about form architecture as well. It's not just function. And, you know, the realm of form is the realm of art, of the artist. In some ways, the engineer who I should have paid homage to today, Rahman Khan, was more of an artist than many architects I know. He was. His spirit was that of an artist, although he had a rigor to build the Hancock Tower, which was a revolutionary tower and still is. It still dominates the city of Chicago, although there are other important buildings in Chicago, as you know. So this is in Germany by Henry van der Velde. Another house, his own private residence in Weimar, 1907, 1908. This was built, you know, 12 years before the Bauhaus began to function in Weimar. Well, it's a well-to-do house, of course, you know, but I think the green climbs with happiness on those walls and nobody trims it down. I always say to the students, if your elevation of the building, if the facade doesn't come out well, don't worry, just bring in the ivy and let it do its job. Because I didn't yet see a so-called ugly building which is covered partially or more in ivy. Now, nature doesn't make mistakes, you know, it has a beautiful instinct. You know, I mean, this building would have looked fine without it as well, but with it, it's not less fine now. comfortable interior, of course, what can we do? Some people know how to live and can afford it. A memorial for Ernst in Jena, in Germany, in collaboration with two sculptors, 1909, 1911. So it's a memorial. Yeah, it's massive. It's heavy, but how else should a memorial be? And when we look at the house of the living and the house of the dead, somehow now you could say that I get carried away by my family name, but somehow I have more affection for the house of the dead, architecturally speaking. I mean, is this truly more for living than this building? I'm not so sure. I mean, I would live here too. Probably there are very comfortable apartments, but this one architecturally is richer. We don't build for the dead any longer, and I think this is a loss. How many architects in the present build for the dead? Not too many, although because of the pandemic and other tragedies, just think of Ukraine, what is happening now there. I think fate and Putin and other things are challenging us to reconsider if we shouldn't again pay more attention to death. So this is in Jena, which was part of the Democratic Republic of Germany, as was Weimar as well. Palace is a palace from 1912, 1913, also in Weimar. Here it is, and the palace it is. Weimar. Now the Werkbund Theater, there was a tragedy here, that he built this Werkbund Theater, the Deutsche Werkbund exhibition in Köln, in Cologne, in Germany, in 1913, 1914. But in 1914, the First World War started and the building was demolished. And not just the building by Henry van der Velde, but also a great building by Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, and also an even more remarkable building, the glass pavilion by Bruno Taut. Great buildings were demolished because the First World War started. And they were demolished just a few months after they were built. So this is the theater that Henry van der Velde built in Köln, in Cologne, in Germany in 1914. It doesn't exist any longer, it's gone. Very sad. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. I hear some noise in the background, if you are so kind, unless you want to say something, please. Thank you. Henry van der Velde, the Werkbund Theater. We have pictures now, but as John Haydock said, in a poem, he lamented that everything in the end becomes a bidimensional picture, black and white or color, but it's just a picture in 2 dimensions. What once was in 3 dimensions or even 4 alive. Please be kind and turn off the microphone, please. So the theater by Henry van der Velde, now another villa, 1913, 1914, also in Germany. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. Otherwise, I stop the presentation right now. So Henry van der Velde in Germany, and now, I mean, we begin to know his style, but his style is very composite, is eclectic, is hybrid in a way. But there are qualities in this, you know, if we are to call it hybridity. Another house, 1913, 1914, so a little older than 100 years old. La Nouvelle Maison, his own residence in Belgium, more modernistic. So this is 1927, 1928. We saw a previous one. I guess he had at least 2 private residences. This is a more modest one, built in Belgium, at the same time when Villa Savoie was built. And indeed, if we compare this building with the Villa Savoie, this is not revolutionary, but it has in its asymmetries and even in its awkwardness and modesty, a certain complexity which I find being positive. So this is his own house from 1927, 1928. Already the architectural language is simpler compared to the villas that we previously saw. So I guess he allowed himself to be more radical, so to speak, because he built for himself. Here he is, his own house on a stand. Okay, Home for the Elderly in Germany, in Hanover, 1929, 1931. I like this building. You know, it's a large building. Here it is. It's a large institutional building, but because of the brick and maybe, you know, some old details, it has a certain intimacy and warmth, which is quite adequate when we consider the function. It's a house, it's a building, a residence for older people, probably without other homes. They just live in this building together. Brick, as always, is an excellent friend, very loyal. Very rarely, no, in fact, I never saw a case where the brick lets us down. No, the brick is a magnificent friend for the architect. A polyclinic and villa landing for this doctor in Belgium, in Ghent, near Ghent, 1933, 1935. Already strikingly white and modernistic, similar to an extent to his own house, but pushing even further the modernistic approach to architecture. This is not any longer Art Nouveau. unless maybe there are some details here and there, but all in all, it's maybe closer to an extent to some kind of a simplified Art Deco, but even that is pushing. Anyway, it's an interesting building, a polyclinic or a small private clinic, and the house of a doctor in Belgium. This is a remarkable building, 1933, 1938, the Library of Ghent, University, the Tower of Books. And here it is, and the tower it is, you know, quite emphatically, you know, expressing the quest for the above, that knowledge maybe makes possible. Otherwise, the building is rather, you know, looks functionalist, but the tower with its, you know, upward movement is proclaiming something beyond function. And you are going to see also the ground floor, the entrance hall is quite emphatic and, you know, sculptural and engaging in terms of formal expressivity. The Tower of Books. I'm just thinking now, when I look at this tower, I'm thinking, because I already wrote the text, a tower for or a house for Oscar Wilde, for Orson Welles, sorry, Orson Welles. Why? Because this year there are 100 years since the most famous, well, some people think the most famous architectural competition of the 20th century, for Chicago Tribune Tower in Chicago in 1922. So this year is the centennial of that indeed very famous and publicized competition, with huge prizes. All in all, I think the prizes were around $1.5 million, and it was won by an architect I wanted to pay homage to just some days ago, but nobody showed up, and so I didn't. Raymond Hood, North American, and his tower is, you know, in terms of silhouette, not very different from this one. So I'm talking about the Chicago Tribune. But what Raymond Hood did at the top, we see here that the top is different from the rest of the building. You know, you just have the shaft, and then at the top, something else happens. What Raymond Hood did for the Chicago Tribune Tower, at the top, he reproduced, no, maybe the word reproduced is not the correct one, inspired by the tower of the Rouen Cathedral, the Gothic Cathedral in France. He created some kind of a ending at the top, you know, a Gothic, you know, a Gothic architecture at the top. And you know, here in the case of this tower, we see at the top, again, a different configuration. You have the body of the tower, which is as it is, but at the top, something else happens. If you are interested, please take a look at the Chicago Tribune Tower as it was built, but also the famous, because many other architects, quite good architects, sent their works in, like Adolf Loos, Walter Gropius, Eliel Saarinen, who got the second prize, and Bruno Taut, Max Taut, and so on. Anyway, it's something that the thing is, the reason I mentioned what I mentioned is because I was talking with my friend from Florida, and I told him about this idea that is the centennial of the Chicago Tribune, and I want to launch a competition for a new tower or a new kind of verticality. And he legitimately said, you know, today a skyscraper is not a mystery any longer. You know, we can build skyscrapers in all kinds of forms. it is kind of true. Plus the skyscraper or the tower is a phallic symbol. Do we need more such symbols in the world? And so maybe to build a tower today is a little bit problematic because it shows, verticality too happy with itself and in a way ignoring so many problems that we are confronted with. So what can we do? How can we express the verticality of the human spirit in the absence of a physical tower? It's a question which I'm not sure I have an answer for. Anyway, this is part of this tower of books. You see here is the tower built by Van der Velde and other towers of Ghent. So I guess he was also, contextualizing his building by the way of building in Ghent, which has itself, several other towers built at various times in history. But intriguing is the floor, the ground floor, the hallway, which is simplified. Its geometry is, reduced significantly. But I think it's eloquent, is interesting visually, and the space is has something enticing. So this is the ground floor of this tower of books that Henry van der Velde built in Ghent. A school from 1936-1942, a school building Leuven in Belgium, now already far away from Art Nouveau, is, although this was built before the Second World War, but it's courageously moving towards what we call modernity. I don't know if he built this as well, but we see here his name, Van der Velde. I don't know, maybe he built this too. But if he built this, I know he built this part, but if he built this one as well, almost 80, 90 years ago, this would be remarkable, because this almost looks like an international style building by Arne Jacobsen, not someone who was born in the 19th century, in fact, older than Le Corbusier and so on. An interesting architect. Even this detail here, it's, who do something like this, not many people. He did it. This, strange, supporting column in the corner. Now, the Belgian pavilion at the 1937 Paris Exposition, here it is, of course, with the Tour Eiffel behind. But the building he built is, significantly modernistic, with this kind of curvature that Eric Mendelssohn used to love and build accordingly. Interesting architect, this Henry van der Velde. Train station in this place, Bankenberg, a train station, a small train station, or maybe not so small. What can we say? It certainly is not Art Nouveau. A Belgian building for the 1939 New York World's Fair. Here it is. So this is the Belgian's pavilion at the exhibition of 1939 in New York City. Bells for Peace. Maybe you remember, because I made several presentations about the World's Fair in New York in 1939 with the incredible Trilon and the Perisphere by Wallace Harrison, and then Albert Kahn also built the Futurama. It was a remarkable world exhibition in 1939 in New York City. The Bells for Peace. Bells for Peace, I hope I have a picture here with it. It's, I know this building was either, I'm not sure if it was demolished, and it was, I think it was exported somewhere else, if I'm not mistaken. I know there are some bas reliefs with pictures of people from different ethnicities, which is a good thing, I think, because in the world there aren't only Europeans and Americans. There are many other people on other continents and other cultures and other times that often we forget. We see here now. It's also true that Belgium had colonies in Africa, and we see here Africans. Congo. Maybe it was a colony of Belgium. But all in all, I think it's important to be generous, or to try to be generous, and remember that the world is not, reducible only to Europe and the United States and maybe Japan. And now, no. In fact, we can learn a lot from other territories and other cultures, other lands, and so on, other mythologies as well, other forms of spirituality, and certainly a lot in the field of vitality. I once saw an exhibition in Paris at Le Musée de l'Homme. I didn't know what the subject matter of the exhibition was. When I entered the large room with the world, it was a large model of the world, and where Africa was, there were many skyscrapers, very tall buildings, and much shorter buildings in North America and Europe and so on. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. I said, how could this be? Africa looked like Manhattan. But what it was actually about, it was a physical depiction of the growth of population. So the poorest parts of the world had the tallest, the highest number of births. So those skyscrapers represented the tumultuous, birth rate of Africa. So isn't it strange? The rich didn't have and don't have any longer, very large families, while very poor countries in Africa had an explosion of the population grew, or it was estimated to grow dramatically. Furniture, and with this we end this presentation on Henry van der Velde on his birthday. Very finely designed and built pieces of furniture. It helps to be an artist, to know how to handle a curve and to have a sense for sculpture and so on. Look at this desk, it shows artistry. He designed not just the desk, but also the armchair. Henry van der Velde. And actually, I end with some paintings by him because I think it's necessary to also look at some of his paintings, a few paintings. Indeed, he was influenced by the painter he admired immensely, and that is Vincent van Gogh, who was Dutch. Henry van der Velde was Belgian. I understand sometimes there are some conflicts between the Belgians and the Dutch, but culture is supposed to soften the frontiers between countries. So anyway, who wouldn't admire Vincent van Gogh? But he was also influenced, as I said, by the pointillists like Seurat and Paul Signac, and we see that influence in this painting. Here again, there are echoes of Vincent van Gogh. but also maybe some anticipation of the Fauvist movement, Le Fauve, an interesting, complex personality, Henry van der Velde, really. This is actually almost a reproduction of a painting by the Sauer by Vincent van Gogh. Thank you, and happy birthday, Henry van der Velde.